So now we have this waste product and we dump it into our municipal water supply as fluoride, which is classified as a neurotoxin. It even says on toothpaste labels that if you swallow more than needed for brushing to contact poison control.
What are people doing wrong about cold plunging, and what's your go-to protocol?
So I think with cold plunging, people they're going too cold and too long, right? Remember, your brain is this far inside the surface of your skull. Yeah. It's not good to bake it. It's not good to freeze it. If you're one of those people that ruminates at night, so your environment quiets, but your mind wakes up and you just lay there sort of ruminating about your day all night, these people do really well with something called a contrast shower.
What do we have to do to get a best night's sleep?
I would say 5 things.
Gary Brecka.
Here we are.
The tables have turned.
They have.
How does it feel to be, do you prefer being a guest or a host?
You know what was strange was when I started the podcast, I had been on, so many podcasts, and I was used to doing stage talks and everything that I had to fight the urge to like be the podcast, and my team all the time would like Max, my production manager's in the back, would write these messages and go, ask the guest questions. I'm like, oh yeah, I'm interviewing. And
that's funny.
I have a lot of respect for people that do their own podcasts and are like media personalities for a living, because to be engaging as a host, to actually kind of draw the guest out and get your audience to know the guest, which is what I was really trying to do when you were on there. It's just a different juxtaposition.
Oh, yeah.
I think it's easier to be asked the questions than to kind of guide the conversation.
There's an art form to guiding.
It took me a long time to really sit and get comfortable doing that, and really, and then go back and watch the podcast and make sure that my audience was getting something out of it.
So tell me, go back in time, like how did you get into wellness? I want to know, like, what's your story there?
It was kind of an epiphany for me. I was a mortality expert for large life insurance. So I worked in a niche market of life insurance called life settlements, which is where people sell their life insurance policies because it's an asset. A lot of people don't realize that life insurance policy is an asset like any other assets, like your car or a piece of artwork or anything else that you own. And you can buy it, you can sell it, you can borrow against it. And very often in older ages, it's the most valuable asset that you have. And initially you put it in place because you had mortgages and a business you were building, and you had, kids that relied on you, and you had a lot of debt. And then in older ages, you find that you don't need the policy anymore. And instead of feeding the premiums, you can actually sell it. And sometimes they're worth a lot of money. And so the insurance companies wanted to know specific mortality, like how many more months does this person have left on earth? If I'm going to put $25 million or $50 million worth of risk on this person's life, I really don't care where they are on actuarial curve. I want to know their specific mortality. And this research was based on big data. And what became glaringly apparent to me was that it flew in the face of what a lot of modern medicine was talking about. Like we knew very early on that there was very little, if any, correlation between LDL cholesterol as an independent risk variable and cardiovascular disease. In fact, we saw the centenarians that we were processing death claims on actually had the highest LDL cholesterol.
Yeah.
And I could go through a myriad of things. We had these factors we called modifiable risk factors. And these were the ones that were kind of difficult to predict. These were things like diet, lifestyle, spiritual well-being, movement, stress, which we would get from their demographic data. And the big variable was, what if this person actually recognized this and took control of it? The sad reality is no one does.
Yeah.
No one does. And, these chronic conditions, chronic anemias, chronic environmental toxicity, chronic autoimmune, all of these conditions that are just plaguing society and just stealing people's life from them, slowly suffocating them. These are all modifiable risk factors.
Yeah.
And I realized that there was human beings on the other side of these spreadsheets. It wasn't just data.
Yeah.
And so I had this epiphany one day. It was over a very specific case, but I had this epiphany one day. I said, what am I doing? I mean, I'm just spending my life predicting when people are going to die, and I have so much information on how to help people live longer, healthier, happier lives. And I'm not a physician. I'm a human biologist, so I'm not licensed to practice medicine. I don't pretend to be one either. And I realized that I needed to open a wellness clinic
Yeah.
and tell the world about this.
Yeah.
And so I went home one day and I told my girlfriend at the time, who then became my fiance, is now my wife, Sage, that I quit my job in the insurance industry and I wanted to open a wellness practice. And this was about 10 years ago. So we took over a little a bankrupt vitamin shop in a strip mall in Naples, Florida.
Okay.
And we put this little clinic in there, right up the sidewalk from like big LA Fitness, and found a physician that was willing to put his license on the line, and a nurse that was willing to come in and take some guidance. And I started just preaching to them all these things that I'd learned in this industry of mortality, and how I thought everything was all wrong. People are nutrient deficient. You know, we're depriving the human body of certain raw materials, and we're getting the expression of disease. And then people think that these diseases are, number one, permanent, so they're on permanent medication for the rest of their life. We think that chemicals or synthetics or pharmaceuticals is the answer to deficiencies in cellular biology. And I knew as a material fact that we could have more impact on the trajectory of somebody's life by changing their nutrient prescription and not their chemical, synthetic, or their pharmaceutical prescription. And this proved to be so true when we started our wellness practice. You know, we had people with all kinds of conditions. I remember the anesthesiologist that his name was Dr. Campamore. The anesthesiologist that was our medical director could not even fathom how many cases were coming into our clinic that he was overseeing, where people were, quote unquote, you know, being cured. Their Hashimoto's went away. Their ulcerative colitis went away. Their irritable bowel syndrome went away. These catch-all conditions like chronic fatigue syndrome and fibromyalgia and Crohn's disease. And we weren't purporting to treat or cure disease. We were just purporting to renutrify the biome. You know, vitamin D3, you know, methylated multivitamins, you know, proper levels of amino acids, proper levels of you know, methylcobalamin, and just the profound changes it was having on people by restoring nutrient density back to their body.
Powerful. Did Sage, when you said, I'm leaving my industry, I'm going to start this health clinic, what was her response?
I was actually really shocked because, you know, we'd been dating for a while, and she just, you know, moved into my house, and she had a young daughter who was 5.5 at the time. She's 16 now, Alina. And she was a real estate agent. And I had a little restaurant in town called the Beach Box. And I had these condos above the Beach Box, and Sage was actually helping me renovate them and lease them out. And so she had a real estate background. I had a mortality background. And I thought she was going to say I was out of my mind because I was making decent money in that space. But I wasn't really a good human. You know, I didn't know much about authenticity. I didn't practice gratitude. I wasn't particularly interested in helping humanity. You know, I was really on a pathway to trying to create wealth for myself. That's what I was really focused on. And, you know, it's really interesting. I had a lot of broken relationships, a lot of broken partnerships, a lot of strained partnerships in that day because I was just so myopically selfish. And I think this epiphany for me, when I decided I was going to stop focusing on being wealthy and really start focusing on other people's well-being, I think when I pitched that to her, I think she must have sensed some like shred of authenticity that she'd never heard before, and she was immediately on board. She was like, "Yeah, let's do it."
That's
and we
amazing.
just went all in.
That's so cool.
And you know, she literally drained her entire life savings. Her nickname is Safety Sage. Because she's had one parking ticket since 1996. Like, she's an absolute rule follower. You know, she pays all of her bills on time. You know, she never maxes out her credit cards. Like, she's very budget conscious. Like, she's Safety Sage. And so I thought that this would be, you know, something that would be way outside of her comfort zone. So I was really enamored when she was like, "Babe, let's do it."
Yeah.
And like any business, I think you're all full of like grandeur and hope, and like, you know, you're like a little kid on Christmas, and, you know, opens a toy and then realizes how hard it is to put it together. And like the 4,000 piece Lego thing looks great on the box, and then you get a open and it's like 40 pages of
Right,
instructions
how do
and
I do this?
stuff
Yeah.
doesn't fit. I mean, that's kind of how our journey in business, went, because I think anybody that tells you that you can separate work from your personal life, if you're in business with your spouse or your significant other, is lying to you.
Yeah. I can't imagine. I'm not with my wife, but yeah, I can only imagine. So the level of biohacking and wellness immersion, like next level stuff that you have right now, was it like that when you started the health clinic, or did it grow in fascination and taking it to the next level over time?
It really just grew. I mean, I have this incessant level of curiosity.
Yeah, you
Like
do.
I am like a child. I want to know everything.
Do you know what Enneagram you are? Do you know the personality Enneagram?
No, I
It's
should
like
take it.
1 to 9. I'm curious. I'm curious what Sage is too.
I'm probably like a 10. If there's
Whatever,
one,
1 and 9
because
is your 10.
I especially with the human
Yeah.
anatomy and human form and function. My undergraduate degrees were in biology, and my postgraduate degrees were in human biology. And I went to a chiropractic college called National College of Chiropractic, and for 4 years, just deep study of anatomy, microbiology, physiology, which I think there's a paucity of real understanding of that in the medical community. And I was so fascinated with the human body and so fascinated with human biology. And it actually really strengthened my faith too, because I realized that this didn't happen by accident. It was designed. And there's so many intelligent, like, times when I was studying that I would just go, wow, this is so intelligent. It's like, like the greatest engineer put this little section together, and then another master engineer put this one together, and another master engineer.
So you saw God and the ineffable as you learn more about science.
No question. The more I know about science, the more I believe in God.
Yeah,
and
because you see an intelligence behind it.
I see an absolute intelligence, and I see an innate connection, an innate intelligence with human physiology. That's gone lost, I think, on a lot of people, and gone lost in modern medicine, right? I mean, the power that the body has to heal itself, the power that this has over this, the mind has over the body, the absolute intelligence in the pharmacy that's inside of us. And some of the greatest things that we've discovered in all of modern medicine have been how do we access the pharmacy that we have within us?
Yeah.
Like fasting creates a whole pharmaceutical cascade. Like if you could get anything from big pharma like you could from a fast, it would be as big as the vaccine, but we have been trained, brainwashed in my opinion, as a society to believe more in what man makes us than what God gave us.
Yeah.
And I believe that shift is going back to what God gave us, sunlight, grounding, breathwork, nutrient density in our food, whole foods, stress, sleep, like the basics that really help human beings thrive. And so I have this incessant childlike curiosity. I don't really like people are like, how do you travel like that all the time? How do you work like that all the time? Because I don't feel like I work a day in my life. Wow. This doesn't feel like work to me at all.
Yeah.
Like I'm excited for this. And I was excited for your podcast because I'm like, when people like you come into my life and, Dr. Hyman and, Andrew Huberman and just all these amazing people that are on this same journey. And I learn one grain of knowledge from every one of them. To me, it's like the most inspiring.
It's a blessing.
Yeah.
To be able to talk to people.
Blessing
like
in the world.
Yeah.
And so, when I'm not on a podcast, I'm reading or studying.
Yeah.
Not because I'm worried about what I'm going to say on the next podcast. It's because that's what I want to do. And so that's moved into gadgets and gizmos, if you want, because I'm always looking for that. What is that next edge? How far can we push human physiology? I mean, can we really extend life expectancy to 140, 160?
Yeah.
And every byproduct of this has been good, right? My kids are on this bandwagon now. They know how to eat, how to exercise, how to de-stress, how to read their own blood work, how to, handle different things that happened in their life. My daughter got mold toxicity from her apartment the other day. She knew exactly what to do, and she just took action about it. It's just so inspiring. And then, my whole family, thankfully, the kids were not yet out of grade school and high school when we started this. So they hadn't gone down these different career paths. Because I think the second biggest blessing in my life was my kids also jumping onto this journey with me.
Yeah.
And
that is amazing.
All being involved in this process. And we're all kind of incessantly curious. My son just started this company, H2 Tabs. And just, watching him and his fiance go down this rabbit hole of, wow, you can take elemental magnesium and you can effervesce it into hydrogen gas, and reading the studies on hydrogen gas, and then putting this whole company together. Like, there's nothing like, if you've ever watched your kids play sports, right? The reward that a parent gets from watching their kids succeed and fail. I'm watching that in real life as my whole family embarks on this whole biohacking journey and wellness.
Yeah, that's so cool. So, I mean, I'm here at this amazing center that you're at, or you do live, you do the podcast. And I mean, it struck me as you're like the wellness Tony Stark. Has anyone ever said that to you? You are Iron Man of wellness.
That's awesome.
So let's go through some of the things that you walked me through.
Yeah.
Some of the things I knew, some of the things I didn't know. I got to see it, how you do it. I want to talk about the molecular hydrogen, the water, the sort of water therapy.
Right.
Can you walk through what that's like?
Yeah. So I sincerely believe that the most undiscovered, underutilized, underdiscussed, undertalked about, underaware category in the entire biohacking space truly is hydrogen water. Hydrogen's the most abundant element in the universe. It's also the smallest element, lightest element that we know of. It's abundant everywhere. It's abundant in our bodies. It's a component of water. It's a component of a lot of things. But the therapeutic benefit that you can get from this, with the virtual zero risk of side effect, because it's so abundant in your body anyway, is astounding to me. How the whole world is not talking about this is beyond me. Initially I was a big proponent of these hydrogen water bottles, which I still like those, but they're expensive, they're cumbersome. The proton exchange membranes don't get to really high parts per million of hydrogen. They break down over time and create less and less and less hydrogen gas. But the benefits of hydrogen gas, and anybody that doesn't believe it, just go to hydrogenstudies.com. There are about 1,335 peer-reviewed studies on there. Don't take my word for it. You can deselect animal trials. You can look at human trials. And the capacity to take, one of the most profound elements on Earth, elemental magnesium, compress it and create hydrogen gas and put that gas into your body as an antioxidant, to me is everyone should be drinking hydrogen water. And I got a lot of flack initially because I was recommending these hydrogen water bottles that were like, $300 a bottle. But those elemental magnesium tablets are $1. I mean, they're less than $1 a day. And they will literally change your life. When I start the day in the morning, I take those H2 tabs, I'll drop it into water. It'll make 12 parts per million hydrogen water. You drink it and instantly feel it, because the oxidative reduction potential of hydrogen will take a glass of, let's say, spring water from being plus 140 on the ORP scale, which means it's causing a little inflammation, and drop it to minus 400, which means it's massively reducing inflammation with no side effects. But we take prednisone, we take cortisone, and all kinds of NSAIDs, these non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, which have massive side effects. I mean, cortisone injections probably end in more professional careers in professional sports than any other single compound known to man, because initially they're anti-inflammatory, but eventually they will eat joints and ligaments and tendons like a termite. You can bathe in hydrogen gas.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. So you could also be immersed in water. Can you go through what that?
Yeah, so I have a hydrogen tub, and essentially what it does is it pulls water out of one side of the tub. It puts it through this hydrogen generator, which is full of distilled water, and it breaks the distilled water apart, throws the oxygen back into the air, concentrates the hydrogen gas, and dumps it back in the tub. And when I showed it to you, the water looks like milky white with all those little hydrogen gas bubbles floating in it. When you submerge yourself in this water, it instantly goes clear, because that hydrogen's going transdermal right through the skin, and it goes into the joints. I don't even talk about what I see happen in my own tub, because people will think you're just a charlatan, you're exaggerating things, or you're trying to sell hydrogen tablets, which I am. I think everybody should take hydrogen tablets. But I see people that have knees, hips, shoulders, rotator cuff, like significant joint pain, including my wife who had an L5-S1 fusion, get out of that tub like they won the lottery. And I think, what's the downside of hydrogen gas through the skin? Most people would be taking methylprednisone to get the same effect, or cortisone, or ibuprofen, or Advil, or any number of other things to try to get the same amount of inflammation reduction. I use it with all my professional athletes that I work with. I think if you were actually to ask John Jones, one of the greatest UFC fighters in the world, what was the single biggest modality in his training session that led to him having less pain, and when he woke up in the morning and taking on that level of training, he would tell you it's hydrogen water and hydrogen gas.
Fascinating.
I just don't think it gets enough popularity. I don't think we use it enough in medicine. I don't think that we're using natural forms of this super abundant element in the way that we could. So,
and like you said, you can get really accessible, affordable options. You can have the fancy gadgets, but these are a lot lower
less
cost.
than $1 a day.
Yeah, right.
You can get a $29 box of that, which will last you a month, and you can drop one of those tablets in your morning water every morning, and you will feel the difference. When my daughter gets a sore throat, I have a gargle with high part per million hydrogen water. Now, it doesn't kill bacteria or kill a virus, but it immediately drops the inflammation. And again, that particular it sounds like I'm really trying to sell that tablet, but that particular tablet from Elemental Magnesium, which is a patented way of taking this element and effervescing it, it has 25 studies on it alone. I mean, you should look at the concussion studies, comparing it to the RICE protocol, the rest, ice, compress, and elevate protocol for injuries like tendons, ligaments. It vastly improved the rate of healing, because the concept when we injure tissue is to use ice to reduce the inflammation. Well, ice causes a vasoconstriction, which means that you're constricting everything. You're not getting inflammation out. You're not getting the anti-inflammatory compounds in. You're not getting the proteins. You're not getting the oxygen, the blood flow that it needs. What if you could actually increase the blood flow? What if you could actually cause a reduction in inflammation, but you could still feed that joint, that injury, with the blood flow that it needs to heal? I mean, it's incredible.
Really amazing.
And if you look at like studies on scleroderma, eczema, psoriasis, there was a really interesting study actually published in the Journal of Experimental Gerontology. It was published in November of 2021. If you want to look it up, Journal of Experimental Gerontology. And it looked at 6 months of hydrogen water intake versus placebo, regular water, in 70 and older men and women. And they used something called a TET2 marker, which is a marker for methylation. So they measured how well it impacted the methylation cycle. They measured things like C-reactive protein, creatine phosphokinase, all of these different inflammatory markers. They measured different levels of compounds in the frontal lobe of the brain, sit-stand ratios, telomere lengths, cognitive scoring, sleep scores, and nearly across the board, all of these improved in older age populations, which is not where you see a lot of research, because most of the research is done on younger biomes because they respond better to different compounds, right? So we don't see a lot of anti-sarcopenic research that has outcomes like this. It improved their sit-stand ratio. It improved their inflammatory markers, and it increased their methylation. It lengthened their telomeres. It improved their sleep scores. It improved cognitive scoring. And it's hydrogen gas. I mean, it's so
cool.
We don't want it to be that simple, but it is.
Yeah, exactly. Sometimes the most effective things are the most simple things.
Yeah.
Let's talk about hyperbaric oxygen therapy. I mean, you work out in an HBOT chamber. You're going to be soon be podcasting from there. I mean, it's brilliant stuff. For people that don't know, why do you love it so much?
So first of all, I want to just say that hyperbarics are not toys, and I don't want to come off as being flippant and just like everybody should have a hyperbaric chamber and just jump in there and do whatever you want. I also think that it's important to note that not all hyperbarics are the same, right? There's different pressures. There are hyperbarics that I think should only be done in a medical facility, likely a hospital, under direct supervision by a qualified professional. And those are ones that use 100% oxygen. Those are highly flammable. I mean, they can actually be bombs. There's a really tragic accident recently, with a young boy that was in a hyperbaric chamber. And from what I understand, the static electricity from a blanket was enough to spark this hyperbaric, make it explode. So I'm not talking about hyperbarics that use 100% O2. There's also certain safety standards that they need to meet. So there are, and you should have a physician write you a script if you're going to use a hyperbaric. You should have somebody that's qualified, which is not me, write you a script for what you're going to do in a hyperbaric. Now, all that being said, there is some fascinating research on hyperbarics at lower and increased temperatures. Lower temperatures, I would say, lower pressures are the ones that you can get in the home hyperbaric soft chambers that will get you like 1.3 ATA, 1.3 times the atmospheric pressure. And there are benefits that you can get from higher pressures, like 2 atmospheres of pressure, which is increased pressure. And we know that every 33 feet you go below sea level, the atmospheric pressure doubles. And if you come up too quickly, the bends is because the gases, expand too quickly. And so what happens when you're under pressure is you saturate tissues with oxygen, right? And other gases too, but you saturate tissues with oxygen. And the hyperbaric research, in my opinion, is conclusive. It's not inconclusive on the impact it can have on mitochondrial proliferation, like increasing the amount of mitochondria and
biogenesis,
and the biogenesis of mitochondria, circulation, the reduction of inflammation. It's obviously well known and FDA approved for wound healing, diabetic ulcers, things like that. But now we're using it as a longevity tool. Like, what if we could increase the perfusion of oxygen gas to tissues that don't normally get that kind of oxygen? Well, you see accelerated wound healing, especially in, blood flow compromised areas of the body. So post-surgical wound healing, I have a very good friend who's a cosmetic surgeon, Dr. Cameron Chestnut, who takes all of his post-surgical patients and has them immediately going into hyperbarics to accelerate their recovery. More oxygen delivered to more tissues, more waste elimination. And so you can compress the ambient air, or you compress the ambient air and you can breathe a nasal cannulus, like 92 to 93% O2. And so I connected with a hyperbaric expert that's written a number of books on hyperbaric therapy. He's actually defending his PhD here very soon, Jason Saunders, and had him come over and write protocols for me. And so I'm just trying to compress time. This is my curiosity where I get like.
Can I be in hyperbaric and podcast?
Yeah. Can I do hyperbarics? And because I have a certain amount of time during the day, and I want to do all this stuff, so can I do it at the same time?
Yeah, there need so many hours in a day.
So, and I don't have success has not driven me to collect cars or watches or but so every ounce of money that I get from the success of my career, I put into biohacking devices. I just want to see how far we can take things.
Can you talk about the undulation of oxygen and what the research shows? I found that fascinating.
Yeah. So there are erythropoietic proteins in the bone marrow. So, and they're sensitive to pressure. They're sensitive to gas. And so, for example, we know when you go into outer space and you're weightless, you age 2 days for every single day that you're in space, right? And by age, I mean osteopenia, osteoporosis, Alzheimer's, dementia, all forms of age-related decline happen at an accelerated rate, and loss of bone mineral density. But we also know that when you use hyperoxia, high oxygen, and hypoxia, you actually can get a lot of beneficial effects. It's been known for decades that athletes can go to altitude and increase the number of red blood cells in their bloodstream, which is a legal form of blood doping, right? Because at altitude, there's less oxygen. The body responds by increasing the production of red blood cells. So it can carry more oxygen. You return to sea level and you have improved performance. So the research now indicates that by putting the body through a sequence of being hyperoxic, high oxygen, and hypoxic, low oxygen, and varying pressures, you can improve mitochondrial proliferation. You can actually improve the way that the body utilizes oxygen. So that's going to increase your VO2 max. That's going to improve your waste elimination, the ability for cells to repair, to detoxify, to regenerate. All of the things that were, improved apoptosis, reduced cellular senescence, zombie cells, cells that are no longer functional. So if you can target all of these byproducts of aging, circulation, oxygenation, mitochondrial metabolism, increased proliferation of mitochondria, cellular waste removal, regeneration, then there's even some indications now that it can have a positive effect on your genetic expression in your DNA. Then why wouldn't we incorporate these types of therapies if you have the time and the wherewithal on your journey?
So if someone, obviously most people don't have access to it within their home, and there are, like, for telehealth patients, we have the one that you had, the collapsible, the soft shell
the soft shell oxyhealth chamber.
Yes, it costs some money, but it is relatively affordable, I think,
Yeah,
for what you're getting.
You can finance these things on a monthly basis.
Exactly.
I always say, look, before you go out and spend your money on, I don't know, cars and watches and expensive clothes, and I don't have a problem with any of those things. I would be investing in things like biohacking device. I would start getting, if I had a little bit of money, I would have water filtration. If I had a little bit more money, I'd add a cold plunge. If I had more, I'd try sauna. And then,
so that's a good point. So you water filtration, if you just, I'm like, if you had nothing else, you'd start there, huh?
Oh, no question.
Tell the people why.
Because, we are slowly poisoning ourselves to death. There's a saying that the dosage determines the poison. I don't particularly agree with that. I believe that the cumulative dosage determines the poison.
True. Yeah.
And so there are lots of things that are within safe parameters, right? They're generally regarded as safe.
Over time.
Or, the grass
grass
model.
Food laws,
food laws. There are, quote unquote, safe levels of mercury, safe levels of lead, safe levels of arsenic, safe levels of glyphosate. But what we're not doing is looking at the cumulative dose toxicity of these things. They accumulated over time. Nobody got mercury poisoning from a single piece of tuna fish.
Yeah.
Right?
Or the combined toxic burden of it.
Yeah, the combined toxic burden. So I believe the single best thing that you could do in your entire adult lifetime, if you have a little bit of money, is get a water filtration system for your home, at a minimum water filtration for your sink, and just have your entire family start drinking 4-stage reverse osmosis water that has been remineralized to hydrate and mineralize the body. We are so mineral deficient. I spoke at a conference not too long ago, OsteoStrong, which is this franchise that has these machines to load bones and increase bone density. And I was shocked by how many people in these spheres still think that our bones, for example, are calcium. That they're really calcium combining with phosphorus to form something called hydroxyapatite, which is our bones are hydroxyapatite. Calcium is one component. But you need 12 minerals in order for that to occur. You need boron, manganese, iron, molybdenum, selenium, silica, magnesium, zinc. You need these 12 minerals, and we're so mineral deficient. So I would, if I was just beginning my journey, I would get water filtration. I would immediately stop drinking tap water. We know that fluoride is a neurotoxin. If you actually go to the National Institute of Health and look up fluoride, it's categorized as a neurotoxin. Why we dump it into our municipal water supply is beyond me.
Yeah,
it's not even fluoride. It's really fluorosilicic acid, which is the byproduct of industrial fertilizer production. So we make I think 200 billion metric tons or 200 million metric tons. I don't want to misquote it, but we make a lot of fertilizer. And when we make this phosphate fertilizer, we have this waste product called fluorosilicic acid. And we realize if we left it in the fertilizer, we burn the root of the plant. So now we have this waste product and we dump it into our municipal water supply as fluoride, which is classified as a neurotoxin. It even says on toothpaste labels that if you swallow more than needed for brushing to contact poison control, well, that amount is less than you would get in 6 8-ounce glasses.
And we're doing it without even telling them. There's no informed consent, right? People are just having
and then chlorine, then microplastics. Here in Miami, we have a lot of what's called PFAs, polyfluoroalkyls. And so filtering your waters,
And you said
amazing.
a 4-stage reverse osmosis. That's what you recommend. Any
Yeah.
specific brand or like pointing
I
people to
actually
it?
use one here in Miami. It's by Miami Water. I don't know if they ship them around the country. And it actually has this filter that they put it through. I also have used the Caraway filter. I have a Caraway filter in the whole home. It filters the water, but the nice thing is it raises the pH, remineralizes it, and it actually adds hydrogen gas, which is my favorite thing. I'll show it to you when we get off the podcast.
I love it.
So that's going to run you, $6,000 or $7,000. So that's a big spend. I realize that. And I'm saying that's the first place I would spend.
If you had some extra money.
If you have no money to spend, start with grounding, sunlight, breath work,
the free stuff,
and developing a sleep routine,
which is a massive. Like again, we're talking about these things that cost money, but I mean, these free things are the most fundamental, foundational, right?
Yeah, they're the foundational. I think sleep is our human superpower, and it's also the most bullied thing in our schedule, right? I mean, if you just stop 20 random people on the street and we're like, hey, what's your sleep routine? What kind of sleep hygiene do you practice? When do you go to bed? They would be like, yeah, whenever I'm ready to go to bed. I mean, whenever I'm done my stuff, right? I mean, sometimes it's 1 a.m, sometimes it's 11 p.m. Well, what do you do to go to sleep? And they're like, what do you mean? I lay down and go to sleep. So they're not conscious and intentional about the things that are really serving their cellular biology, like sleep. So if you have no money, no wherewithal per se, you could actually develop a sleep routine that would materially change.
What your go-to sleep routine? What do we have to do to get a best night's sleep?
I would say 5 things. First of all, be intentional about sleep. Actually, start to prioritize sleep. If you prioritize sleep, you'll be able to give so much of your day away the next day if you get a sound night's sleep, because there's some things that are happening during sleep, particularly during deep and REM sleep, that don't happen during any other phase of our 24-hour circadian cycle. For women, it's critical, and they need a little bit more sleep than men, because hormonal phasing and our hormonal production is largely done during sleep. So during deep sleep, we're getting the activation of something called the glymphatic system, which is the waste elimination system in the brain. Most people know about the lymphatic system, which is our lymph nodes. It's a static system. It has no pressure behind it. It requires muscles to sort of move this fluid, but it's eliminating waste. In the brain, it's called the glymphatic system, and it activates during deep sleep. So if you're getting healthy amounts of deep sleep, you're getting healthy amounts of elimination of waste from your brain.
Yeah.
And who doesn't want to eliminate waste from their brain? Yeah. And during REM sleep, we're basically taking the experiences that we've had during the day, marrying those with our subconscious, and creating memories and learning is actually happening during REM stage of sleep. So, if we're a college student, we want to grasp what we're learning or high school student, we want to grasp what we're learning in school, or we want to take the context of something we're reading and assimilate it into knowledge that we can understand. We need to have good REM sleep. So focusing on sleep is amazing. So here's my go-to 5. Darken the room. Surgically remove every ounce of light. If you're staying in a hotel room, take your shirt and throw it over the clock.
Yeah, the
nightstand. Or invest $10 in a soft sleep mask. That'll be one of the best investments you ever make.
Oh, it's been a game changer in my REM and deep.
Same here.
Absolutely, like a lavender sleep mask. It's been like, I never thought I could do it. But no, it's the best. Sorry for it.
That's a under $10 biohack, right? And you buy it once, you'll have it forever. And don't get the ones with the straps, with the Velcro straps that dig into your head at night, or that go over the tops of your ears, because they'll irritate you at night. You want the big, soft, 100% cotton, slightly weighted ones that goes all the way around and you snap. I promise you, this is a game changer. Even if you sleep on planes, game changer. So I would darken the room. I would actually chill the room down a lot colder than you think. 65 to 69 degrees Fahrenheit, a lot colder than you think. And very often it's good to actually put your feet out of the covers. So leave your head and your feet out. If you're one of those people that ruminates at night, so your environment quiets, but your mind wakes up and you just lay there sort of ruminating about your day all night, these are great. These people do really well with something called a contrast shower, which is getting into a warm shower, then turning the water as warm, even hot as you can stand it, letting it run on the back of your neck and down your spine for a minute or two, stepping out of that stream of water, This is the part they don't like. Turning as cold as you can get it and step back into that stream of water for 30 seconds to a minute max. Yes, it's going to shock the body. And yes, it's like a cold shower that most people don't like, but then walk out of that shower and dry off. It's not enough cold water for a prolonged enough period of time to freeze you. What it does is it breaks something called the catecholamine cycle, this cycle of neurotransmitters that elevate in the brain and create a wakened state. So a lot of people go to bed body tired, but mind awake.
Yeah.
Okay. And this just steals hours of potential quality sleep from them. I would also really practice good oral hygiene before bed. So just brushing, flossing, tongue scraping, that's a must to clean your oral palate. And then when you get into bed, everybody says don't be on your phone at night. Okay, that's hard or impossible for most people. So just turn your screen red, turn the brightness down as low as you can get it. Either invest in a pair of red light glasses or at least that red screen. And when you are going to go to sleep, airplane mode, everything off on your phone, Wi-Fi, cellular, network, and set it about 6 feet away from you. And then there's a breathwork technique that I do in bed, along with a visualization technique that I've found to be really, really powerful. I've never been able to make it to 10 or 12 of these breaths. So, and basically you close your eyes, you lay on your back, you take a long, deep breath in through your nose. You take about a 3 or 4 second pause. And during that 3 or 4 seconds, you literally visualize grabbing the thoughts that are going on in your head and pulling them into your lungs like this. And then you breathe them out through a straw. Like a long, slow exhale.
Yeah.
It is astounding.
It's amazing
what that routine will do for you.
Yeah.
Contrast shower, dark room, no blue light in bed, oral hygiene, breath work in bed. It's
invaluable.
Those 5 things.
So good. What do you think of mouth taping?
I'm a huge fan of mouth taping. Now, people that have deviated septums or congestion in their nasal cavity or any kind of inflammation
Obstructive,
obstructive issues, they won't benefit from it. But I have noticed, and I actually did not a sleep study, but I did a sleep challenge with my community, and I usually get thousands of people to participate in this. Whoop was a big sponsor of it. They sent everybody Whoops, and what we did was we got a baseline, and then we looked at just little things like darkening the room, cooling the temperature down, the breath work in bed, the contrast shower, which was a game changer for a lot of people. And that's before you get to supplementation. Low doses of melatonin. I'm not a big fan of high doses of melatonin, but things like sleep breakthrough from biooptimizers, magnesium breakthrough from biooptimizers. These have been go-to supplements of mine because they're just magnesium based. But basically, we developed this baseline, and then we had people just engage in these activities. One of the most incredible things was just raising their awareness, like bringing sleep to their attention, right? And going, wow, sleep is probably the most important part of my day, and it's what I bully the most. Because if I don't get to watch my show, I'll interrupt my sleep to watch my show. If I didn't finish answering my emails, I'll interrupt my sleep to, it's like the stepchild, the bastard stepchild of our day. Yeah. And we just push it around. And then we expect to function well the next day. And the other thing is consistency with bedtimes. Just try it for a week. Say, okay, I'm going to go to bed at 10:30 or 11 o'clock, and then put yourself to bed at that time and wake up at the same time every morning. After 7 days, you'll get into this habitual pattern where it's, for the first time, maybe in your adult lifetime, you feel what it's like to be well rested, and then you get addicted to that.
That's so good. That's such a good tip. Well, I'd like to talk about cold plunging. So, what are people doing wrong about cold plunging, and what's your go-to protocol?
So, I think with cold plunging, people are they're going too cold and too long. I think, remember, this is a hormetic stress, right? So hormesis is the process of stressing the body, and the body strengthens in response. We're not trying to become cold adaptive. We're trying to cold shock the body and almost surprise the body, right? So if one time when you came home, I was hiding around the corner and I jumped out and scared you, you'd be really scared. If every single day you knew I was hiding there, then when you came around the corner, you're like, okay, I know you're there. You don't have the same reaction. Okay, so we're trying to cold shock the body. So we're trying to surprise the body. And for short periods of time. So colder is not better, longer is not better. And so the rule of thumb for cold plunges is below 58 degrees is a cold plunge, because that's what starts the peripheral vasoconstriction, the release of something called cold shock proteins, the activation of brown fat, and a heightened secretion of dopamine. But with cold plunging, 48 to 52 degrees is fine. 3 minutes minimum, 6 minutes maximum. After that, there's a sharp decline in benefits. I think cold plunging has become like a cold contesting. It's like every guy. It's like, well, you bench 200, I bench 310. Oh, really? I bench 405.
Each other.
It's like the colder the better, the longer the better.
Yeah.
I see people going underwater with snorkels for 12
I've
minutes
seen
in 37-degree water. That is insane, right?
Yeah.
Remember, your brain is this far inside the surface of your skull.
Yeah.
It's not good to bake it. It's not good to freeze it. So 48 to 52 degrees, 3 minutes minimum, 6 minutes maximum. Take a couple of deep breaths before you go in there and breathe all the way in, and then step into the cold water and breathe out on your way down. Believe it or not, dunking when you first go into a cold plunge will actually make the experience easier for you. It'll activate something called the mammalian dive reflex, which mammals have, especially aquatic. When they dive deeper in the ocean, as the water cools and passes over their face, it moves their nervous system into a parasympathetic state, which is a rest and digest state. It actually slows their heart rate, slows their oxygen utilization down. So if you actually can dunk when you first go in, you're going to have a better experience. And then you get 4 things out of cold plunging, right? And cold plunging doesn't have to be a big, expensive endeavor either. Yeah. I tell people, just take Tupperware containers and fill them full of water, put them in your freezer to make the big blocks of ice, right? So you don't have to go to 7-Eleven and spend $20 on a bunch of ice bags every time, because that'll get expensive too. Just fill these Tupperware containers with water, put it in your freezer, drop it into your bathtub, and you'll have a cold plunge for 3 days. It'll last 3 days. 4 or 5 of those ice blocks. And you get a peripheral vasoconstriction, which forces the blood into your vital organs, liver, lungs, pancreas, kidneys, the brain. You'll get the activation of something called brown fat, which is a special type of fat in the body. It's different than visceral fat. And what brown fat does is it exchanges a calorie for a measure of heat. So it actually needs calories, right? So it does raise your metabolism. Yeah. Yes, it does burn calories at an accelerated rate. And yes, it is good for fatty acid for fat metabolism. And so, it activates brown fat, which raises your body temperature, exchanges calories for heat. It releases something called cold shock proteins, which are amazing proteins in your liver that respond to cold water, because water's 29 times more thermogenic than air. So it removes heat from the body at 29 times the rate of water or of air. And which is why you could die in 72-degree water, but you can't die in 72-degree air. And then you get a spike of dopamine, and you actually get a lasting secretion of dopamine. Some of the research and literature I've looked at says it could last as long as 6 or 7 hours. I call it my drug of choice affectionately, because nothing makes you feel better for longer. And I think that if people realized the feeling, the effect that they could get from that, they wouldn't chase so many synthetic mechanisms of doing the same thing. They'd actually chase these organic, widely available mechanisms. And look, if you don't have, 5-6 grand for a cold plunge, start with a cold shower and start freezing, Tupperware blocks of ice. And you have a cold plunge. I mean, there's nothing that, stopping you from starting today.
I love it. What's your thoughts on some hot topics? I think controversial things. Every time I talk about them, your take on, I'm thinking of the mood boosting benefits of cold plunging, and by no means am I making the equivalent across the two, but your thoughts on SSRIs and our approach to depression and anxiety in the United States, and the research showing SSRIs for people that have mild to moderate depression is about little better, about the same as placebo. What's your take on that?
Yeah, well, I think the research is even worse, right? I mean, you see increased levels of suicidal ideation. You see longer durations of depression. We developed for decades this what's called the serotonin hypothesis of depression. So if you're low on serotonin, you are by definition depressed. So if you take that definition, which was the PDR definition, the physician's desk reference definition of depression. Okay, so I'm low on serotonin, and that's why I'm depressed. So shouldn't the solution be to raise serotonin? If I'm depressed because I'm low on serotonin, why don't we raise it? But that's not even what we do, right? We give people selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. So essentially is what these do is they bind to receptor sites and they slow the uptake of the neurotransmitter serotonin. So essentially what it's doing is it's rationing what little serotonin you have. So it's saying if you have very little serotonin, we'll allow you to use it as, I'm oversimplifying, but we'll allow you to use it at a slower rate so you don't go off a cliff. But if the definition is low serotonin, why don't we just raise it? And so if we take a step back from that, where does serotonin come from? Well, it's actually methylated in the gut. We take an amino acid called tryptophan, we methylate it into the neurotransmitter serotonin, 90% of which is in our gut. It travels up the vagus nerve and populates the brain. And the interesting thing about serotonin is that serotonin is one of the neurotransmitters that is combined with other neurotransmitters to create various moods. So if you said to me, what's a mood? What's an emotional state? I would say it's a collection of neurotransmitters, often bound to oxygen. And so you take a bowl and you say, I want to make happiness. Okay, well, that's so much serotonin, so much norepinephrine, so much, I'm making this up, dopamine, so much ephedrine. Boom, you have the emotion happiness. Well, let's say you just took one of those ingredients out, like serotonin. Okay, so now I say, listen, Dr. Cole, you can be in whatever mood you want. You just can't use serotonin.